Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to the meeting this morning of the 2024 primary election canvass. I would like to remind everyone to silence their cell phones this morning. That's always a good reminder for me, as a matter of fact. And if you plan to speak this morning during public comment, there's a sign-in sheet back in the corner. If you'd be willing to go ahead and sign that in, then you won't have to give your address or anything. All right. I would like to note for the record this morning that Commissioner Blyenberg and I are present along with representatives of Commissioners Benega, Karski, and Kipley. Those representatives are Alex Jensen, Jeff Barth, and Cindy Heiberger. Together we constitute the canvassing board, and with the auditor, we'll make the canvass of the primary election votes. I'll be in touch back on that subject in just a couple minutes, but first, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first I'd ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved, Jensen.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, that takes us to our main order of business this morning. First, as I mentioned earlier, there are 3 individuals on the dais this morning representing commissioners who are absent for cause today. South Dakota Law 12-2036 allows members of the governing board of the county commission to designate representatives under such circumstances. So that's why Mr. Barth, Mrs. Heiberger, and Mr. Jensen are with us today. All right, with that, the item of business is to consider a motion to certify the results for the June 4th, 2024 primary election canvass. And I'll turn it over to our auditor, Leah Anderson, to walk us through that process.
Yes, good morning. And if you don't mind, I'm going to stay here because I have a lot of papers. So overall, with the exception of killing a lot of trees for this election, we had a great election, successful primary. Voter turnout was less than desirable. It was a little over 8%. So I would like to go through a few things this morning, but basically we had a total of 5 provisional ballots. 3 of those were approved and 2 were rejected. We'll get into a little more of that as we go through how to reconcile things. And I've also presented to you the abstracts and the election summary. You've got it in paper form, and also it's on your screens. And we'll talk about reconciling those as well. There were no reports of incorrect ballots being distributed at any of the precincts. I think doing our precinct boundary reorganization was very helpful for that. And then I guess the last thing, just because it's been in the news as far as the canvass, that late on June 3rd, there was a challenge that was presented. Eric Bogue and I communicated on that, and we were very involved with that on election day by spending some time at 2 different precincts going through that challenge. With that challenge, there was the challenge at 516, which is located at the downtown library. That challenge was rejected. The challenge at 416 was upheld by the precinct board, and we can talk more about that too, because I'm sure everyone's going to have questions. But the result of that was that 132 absentee ballots cast in 416 were rejected by the precinct board. I will open that up for questions, and then once we cover questions, I can go through more of the procedure if you would like.
All right, is there questions for the auditor at this point?
So far. Okay, no,
Well,
that's great.
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure I gave other people a chance first.
Sure.
So if you could just walk us through a little bit, because you're right, there has been, of all the questions that I've gotten, they've been mainly about the votes that were challenged. And there was some discrepancy in the numbers that were reported out. Initially, it said that 165 votes weren't counted, and that, and then it came back that there were 132. And I just wondered if you could kind of help us clarify that for us.
I sure can. So initially, that number was an off the top of my head number as I was leaving this room on election night and heading downstairs. We had about, it wasn't exactly 165, but approximately 165 ballots that were voted absentee for 416, precinct 416. At the time, I thought I was supposed to segregate all of those ballots until we determined which ones were rejected and which ones were not. We did that with when we did our provisional process the next morning. We went through those ballots and separated out. We had to take the registration list, which are in these binders that you see here. We had to take that registration list and go through and physically look and make sure that the precinct board had written rejected by that voter, and then pull that ballot. And so we did that process. And then there were 34 ballots or 32 ballots that had to be counted. And so those were counted the next day when we did our provisionals, because we had to get an absentee counting board back and a provisional board back so that we could go through that process and complete those. So the 132 that were rejected are still segregated in our vault, and the other ballots were counted.
Okay. So, on Wednesday, I just want to make sure I was following the days correctly. So on Wednesday, the day after the election, is when you went through that process and figured out which votes were in and which votes were out.
Correct.
And then you had the absentee ballot board back in to count the votes that you did count.
Well, the absentee ballot board had to process the ballots. The counting board consisted, and the resolution board were here as well. The counting board consisted of Kim and myself. We ran the tabulator, and then the resolution board was also present.
Okay. So that was 33 votes that were counted on Wednesday?
It was 32 or 34. I think it was 34.
Okay, so how many votes were rejected on?
132 were rejected.
Okay, and then 34 were counted.
My 165, like I said before, that was an approximation. That was not an exact number. That 165 was not an exact number. So there was actually 164 ballots total. So 32 were counted and 132 were rejected.
Okay.
And those numbers are reflected in the information that you're going to reconcile today.
Okay. I had a separate question, and you might be going to go over this, but you talked about the provisional ballots, and I think with this will come in when we're doing the canvassing. But in your memo, you talked about that you received 5 and 3 were accepted and 2 were rejected. And so when we go through this, we'll see that there are 5 votes that we are going to count, but they are from 3 voters, right?
Correct.
Yeah, the numbers just were kind of confusing because they happen to be the same. So I just wanted to clarify that. All right. Anybody else have any questions? Commissioner Heiberger, or Cindy Heiberger.
Hi.
Are you going to cover at all the difference between the 2 voter votes, why one rejected these and why the other one accepted them, since I think they're similar? Am I missing it?
Sorry, been a while. So are you going to go over later on why one board rejected or one didn't? And I don't know if you would even know the reasons why.
I don't know the reasons why. I know the first board was quick to make their decision. The other board took quite a bit of time that day. That's why it was very late when we got word, and I was over at that precinct again on election day at approximately 5:30 to deliver to them contact information for those voters. And so I don't know their reasons why exactly.
Follow-up, Commissioner?
Yes.
Do they notify those, I know they notify them that their votes weren't counted at this point, but do they notify them as to the reasons why their votes weren't counted?
I do not know. That was up to the board. We gave them the information to make every effort they could to contact each voter. I don't even know if they were able to get through to each voter. They made a good faith effort to do that, so.
And then do the voters, as in the general public of Minnehaha County, do they find out eventually? Is there like a report that goes out from those people as to why one was rejected and one was not?
This was new ground, and our state's attorney may be able to help out here, but there was nothing in law explaining how this process would work, because normally a voter that's challenged would be present. So with that being said, new ground for us and state's attorney's office, we contacted the state. There wasn't really a procedure in place as to how to handle this. So we did the absolute best we could to provide all the information we could to the board so they could contact the voters. There isn't a report or anything that I know of that we would be doing after the fact. It's different from running provisional ballots. Like provisional ballots, which you can see here, we have a report that we create for those. And those do get analyzed, but in this process, we counted the votes that were not rejected, and that was all we could do.
One more question. When did you get wind of this? Did you hear anything personally before that email came to you that there was rumblings that this was going to be rejected?
No. In fact, the email came through at about 4:30 on the 3rd, but I was busy in the vault or helping with people picking up ballot boxes. I didn't sit down to my desk till about 7-ish, read the email, forwarded it to Eric. Eric had come back over because he was trying to help me resolve another issue at the time. And so he got the email and he said that he would be looking into it prior to election morning so that we could have a plan of action.
So you didn't know about it at all ahead of time?
No, I did not.
Okay, thank you.
Could I ask a few?
Yes, Commissioner Blackenberg.
Thank you. You mentioned that there was no procedure for the challenge and that you reached out to the state for guidance. Did they offer guidance, and what was that?
Eric communicated with the state, so I might defer to him on that. We had to use codified law and interpret it the best we could for this type of challenge.
And then just one follow-up question, if I could. Who are the members of the board?
So each precinct board is made up of a superintendent and at least 2 deputies. Some of them had more or less, but that particular board, 416, had 3 members, a superintendent and 2 deputies.
Did they have any training that would prepare them in any way for what we asked of them, or was it completely?
Not for this. So that's why we spent quite a bit of time there. We went over, myself, Eric and Daniel Hagar, state's attorney, and also the challenger. We all went to the precinct, and thankfully they weren't busy. And so we were able to explain to them, Eric shared with them codified law, and both the challenger and the county were represented and were able to make their arguments. And then the precinct board was left to make that decision. We were available to them for quite some time. I want to say at that precinct, we were there for probably a couple hours to answer questions and go through that process. If a voter came in during that time, we did stop. You know, we weren't talking while they were trying to conduct their voting process, but we had to work in between voters.
Cindy.
Yes.
Sorry, one more question. The superintendent and the deputies, are they elected positions or are they appointed positions? Thank you.
They're not elected. I would say for the most part, they're appointed because we appoint them. They're just citizens that want to participate in the election process. And so they do get paid, but they are, so I wouldn't say they're volunteers, but they are appointed.
Mr. Barth.
Madam Chair, I have a couple of questions and points. Auditor Anderson, how many Democrats were in the group that were disallowed?
I have not determined party affiliation on those ballots. They are down in our vault, and we can go down and look at that, but I haven't gone through and determined party affiliation.
I just know that every time I run for office, they let Republicans vote. And if that would stop, I'd win more elections. But thank you. And I guess if I lost by 80 votes, I'd want those ballots counted. Is there any chance that these ballots will be counted?
That's not up to me
No. Okay.
that I know of.
And have the disputed people lost their voter registration on this?
We have not done anything with their voter registration. I've talked to a few of the people, and I've, just walked through things with them, but their voter registration is still intact.
I guess finally I would say that, it's hard to see how absentee voters could be present to be verified. I mean, you're, hiking the high Sierras or, skiing across Antarctica, and you can't be reached on election night. They didn't know that would be a requirement. So do absentee voters need to be present at the polling places?
I guess I can't answer that question. There's a lot of times where people need to vote absentee. They weren't challenging the fact that they were absentee voters. I think the challenge was more with their identity as a registered voter in Minnehaha County.
I guess one more question. Do you have any messenger ballots where a person, a quadriplegic in the hospital wants to vote and someone takes the ballot to them and then brings it back? Did you have any of those?
For that precinct?
No, for
or
any
in general?
precinct.
Oh, I'm sure we had messenger ballots. We also had in-person voting. None of the in-person votes for that precinct were challenged.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, I'll turn it over to the auditor to walk through the actual canvassing process.
Okay, so here's the fun part. Lots of reconciliation. So in your paperwork, I did include just a memo that I found that had been used in the past, kind of giving you some of that instruction of, whoops, oh.
Oh, okay. Go ahead and call this meeting back to order. And we were just at it's like a cliffhanger, right at the point where we're going to start the canvassing.
Yes,
So I'm going to turn it back
cliffhanger.
over to Auditor Anderson.
Thank you. Okay, so there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, and I've spent a great deal of time this week trying to reconcile, or not trying, but reconciling a lot of numbers, which I enjoy, but after spending about a month and a half putting in a lot of overtime, I did not want to do that this weekend. But anyway, the canvas, the purpose of the canvas, just for those who don't know, is the official certification of the election results for our county. The state canvas will occur tomorrow at 10 o'clock. The purpose of the canvas also is to account for each ballot cast and ensure that every valid vote is cast and included in the election totals. The thing that it has not happened yet, which we're going to talk about as our next agenda item, is the post-election audit. So we've never had an audit. We will be doing an audit for this election, and we will get into that later. So the canvassing board will examine documents. There's a lot of different documents. some of those I have here so I could explain them. In the binders, you're going to find what we call the registration list, and that's where the precinct board member writes down which line matches up to the poll list. And so you'll have your registration list. In the front cover of each binder, you're going to find both the poll list from election day, and then you're also going to find the poll list and the registration list from absentee. So those are going to be in the pocket of the binder. And then you will have your results, which you have in paper form and also on the computer. A couple things. The one that looks like this is the abstract. The abstract includes the provisional ballots. So I gave you a photocopy of, these were the provisional. There were 3 ballots, but this is how it impacted the votes, is on this sheet. So these are included in the abstract. They are not included in the summary results report, which is the one that we print out of the electionware management software system. So that's your other packet that you'll have. So you would have to take this report and add these votes, and I'll go through that detail in just a second. And then those would match the abstract. The differences, as I put on the sheet here, down under election results, I did explain where those differences will be, so you will be able to locate those quickly. So in addition to those 2 handouts and the poll list, the registration list, I also am providing for you the recap sheets. So the ones that look like this, and these are in order of precinct, this is the absentee, and I'm gonna turn these over to you. And these recap sheets are from election day, and they look like this. There's more columns. Now, I will tell you this, as I was reconciling these yesterday, I did find that the recap sheet for precinct 3-9 most likely is sealed in the ballot box with the ballots, because 1, we wouldn't have processed those ballots without the recap sheet. So the whoever was operating that tabulator would have had to have had the recap sheet at that time. Since I can't open the ballot boxes at this time, I can't go in and look for that sheet, but I've looked everywhere else. So what I did instead was I pulled some other items. I pulled their yellow envelope to make sure it wasn't in there. And then I did at least get the certificate of transmittal where they listed that they had 84 voters. So that's the best reconciliation I have for precinct 3-9 at this time. If that happens to be one of the ones that you select, that's why I wanted to explain that. Also, I've provided with you the provisional certification report. That's the copy right here. The double-sided, well, yours is double-sided, of the provisional ballots. So those are all at your fingertips for reconciling. The voter counts, so a member of the canvassing board could, in conjunction, you could pull a random precinct, look at the registration list, the poll list, compare those numbers to the recap. One thing that I went ahead and did yesterday was I created a spreadsheet. And this is just to compare it's a 3-page document that you have, to compare adding the 2 recap sheets and getting that total and comparing that to the total on this report. And I only printed one of these. You'll have to share it because it's 128 pages. This is the precinct summary report. And so I compared these numbers with these numbers to make sure that we could account for each ballot. There are a few adjustments on this spreadsheet, and that would have been for ballots that had missing stamps. We are unable to count a ballot that has a missing stamp. I will say that we improved from the city election and the city runoff to this election. Our precinct workers did a little better job of stamping those ballots, but we did have 7 that were not counted because of the stamp.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, where does the stamp normally get placed? Is that when you go in to vote, or where does that, I see there are a
Yes.
couple that missed it, but,
Yes. So the process happens when the precinct worker is, before they're going to give the ballot to the person to vote the ballot, they are supposed to make sure that that stamp is there. I would say, as a voter, that's a good thing for a voter to also check, is to make sure their ballot has a stamp. It's located at the bottom right corner of their ballot is where that stamp should be placed. If a stamp is off and just not in the center of that box, the ballot could have been put into the top tray on the tabulator, but then the resolution board would look at that ballot and say, yes, the stamp is there, it's just not being detected. So these were ones where the stamp was completely not on the ballot.
thank you.
Just follow-up question. So those 7 that didn't have the stamps, are they included in the summary?
No,
They are not. That's what I wanted to make sure.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
if they don't have a stamp, we can't run them through the tabulator at all.
Okay. Thank you.
Could I ask a question about the stamp?
Yes.
Who puts the stamp on and what's the purpose of it?
So each precinct has their own stamp to identify that it's a valid ballot. So the purpose would be to make sure that we don't have ballots placed into the box that shouldn't be. The stamp itself identifies the precinct, and the person that's supposed to do that is one of the precinct workers, so one of the deputies or the superintendent that's at the precinct board. And that process, so when the voter first comes in, they state their name, show their identification. The person finds them in the registration list. It gets written into the poll list so that there's a number that identifies them back and forth that way. And then the third person at the table is supposed to select the correct ballot, stamp it, and hand it to the voter.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So if you have other questions, I would be happy to answer them, but I will leave you with all of these tools and you are able to verify anything that you want to verify.
Okay. So my understanding of the process is that what ultimately the canvassing board is determined or tasked to do, and you'd correct me if I'm wrong, is to take the summary election results that came out and to make sure that they match up with the abstract that we're certifying. So I was proposing that we just go through race by race, the summary, compare it to what it says on the abstract, and make sure that they all tie out. But I am open to other questions if anybody on the board has other questions. Commissioner Blankenberg.
I just have a question about the recap report, the 128 pages. Is that just more detail than the abstract? How is that different?
This is different because it goes by precinct. And so I utilized this report yesterday to compare by precinct to make sure that the total votes cast or the ballots cast were the same in comparison to the recaps. And then I looked for if there was a difference, I looked for it. So I looked to see if it was because of a missing stamp or, they're sometimes off by 1 or 2, and it's for those reasons usually.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Well, why don't we go through race by race, comparing the document that says unofficial results, the summary results report, to the results on the abstract. Both of these documents were posted online by the auditor, and I'll go ahead and just read them and confirm with the folks on the canvassing board that they agree that they match or that we can tie them out. After we get through that process, people have other questions, want to look at other information, we'll do that. Does that make sense? All right. So first race is for Senator District 9, and you can find that on page 3 of the abstract and page 2 of the summary election results. And it shows that Joy Hone had 1,118 votes cast. That's what the summary election report shows. And that were 385 votes cast for Mark Willitson. Does everyone agree that those tie out?
Yes.
Everybody found them?
That's what it says.
Okay, all right. So that next race is also on page 3. Jordan Youngberg received 470 votes. Tom Pischke received 1,085 votes. Now you'll see in the abstract it says 1,087 votes. That's where the provisional election results come into play. And it shows on there that 2 votes were approved for Tom Pischke. So if we add those 2 votes to the votes reflected in the summary election report, then they do tie out. All right. That takes us to the next election for District 2 State Rep. It's on page 4 of the abstract. Jake Schoenbeck received 475 votes. John Sharda received 1,410 votes. And David Cull received 1,168 votes. You guys are going to need to speak up if anybody sees any problem. Okay. So the District 9 vote is found on page 4 as well. And Bethany Soy, I'm going to apologize to folks right now because I may butcher a name or two, but I'm going to do my best. Bethany Soy received 978 votes. Christy Golden, 563 votes. Daryl Christensen, 450 votes. And Tessa Schwann, 764 votes. Okay, takes us to the next District 11 race. Those votes are on page 5 of the abstract. Bill Linsenmeyer received 255 votes. Brian Mulder, 627 votes. Carrie Weems, 627 votes. And John Coonery, 617 votes. I think those match. That takes us to the District 12 vote. That's on page 5 of the abstract. And Amber Arling received 398 votes. Greg Jameson, 369 votes. And Manny Steele, 280 votes. Ties out. Takes us to District 13, State Rep. John Hughes received 272 votes. Brad Jankard received 218 votes. Penny Baybridge, 55 votes. Tony Van Huysen, 275 votes. Now I need a drink of water. Okay. So that takes us to the State District Rep, District 14. Tony Kaiser received 1,091 votes. Taylor Ray Rayfeld received 1,205 votes. And Tyler Tordson received 805 votes. Okay. So this takes us to County Commissioner at Large. Cole Heisey received 5,371 vote in the summary, and he's at 5,372 votes in the abstract. So if you go to the provisional, you'll see that there is 1 vote for Cole Heisey there. So that would tie those out. Roger Russell received 3,852 votes in the summary, 3,853 votes in the abstract, and once again, you'll see 1 vote for Roger Russell on the provisional. Dean Karski received 3,938 votes, and Dan Kipley received 2,766 votes. Then we'll go through all of these different precinct votes just as a matter of just checking and making sure that the system is working. So we have precinct for VP 07, and that is on page 15 I believe, if my notes are correct. Yep, so VP 07 is on page 15 of the abstract. Isaiah Cheddar received 97 votes. Christopher Peters received 144 votes. Everybody find that?
I did not find it yet.
Okay, so I'm on page 6 of the summary results. We're in precinct committeeman, precinct VP 07.
Did we skip the?
Oh, did I? Okay, my apologies. Thank you. Oh, okay, I did, sorry about that. Okay, so VP 01 is on page 15 as well, and Jeff Shaw received 94 votes, and Brandon Lane received 40 votes. All right, now we're back on track. VP 07, same page, page 15. Isaiah Cheddar received 97 votes. Christopher Peters received 144 votes. VP 09, Timothy Tiert received 87 votes, and Scott Swanson received 73 votes. And VP 11, Dennis Dugard received 65 votes, and Nicholas Buchholz received 49 votes. Next page is VP 15. That's on the next page, page 16. Toby Kaiser received 78 votes. Spencer Reitzman received 106 votes. VP 16. Brent Wallen received 49 votes, and Rich Konechki received 88 votes. VP 17. Wayne Steinhauer received 100 votes, and Larry Fossum received 96 votes. All right, next page. VP 21, which is on page 16. Got ahead of myself. Did I skip a page again or something? No?
On the abstract, the next page goes to committee woman, so you'll have to go back.
Okay, so VP 21 Precinct Committee Man is on page 16. And Dale Barnhart received 116 votes. Charles Jones received 49 votes, and Kevin Siemens received 110 votes. So that takes us to precinct 110, and that is on page 9. That's what I had written down. The abstract. And Alexander Fegan received 22 votes. Gerald Erickson received 18 votes. Roger Russell received 44 votes. Everybody find that one? Mm-hmm. Okay. So the next one is precinct 201. John Hughes received 106 votes. TJ Nelson, 97 votes. Precinct 202. Jeff Turno received 70 votes. Maxwell Mickelson, 88 votes. Jeremy Jansen, 72 votes. Now we go to the next page, page 10 of the abstract. Precinct 203, Corey Rayfeld received 90 votes. Alan Unruh received 89 votes. 208, Nathan Block received 49 votes. Sean Torno received 30 votes. 217, Tyler Swanger received 61 votes. Tyler Tortson received 128 votes. 311, Andrew Curley received 36 votes. Brian Mattson received 86 votes. So page 11 of the abstract, James Hubers received 50 votes. Paul Laughlin received 9 votes. Tyler Boyning, I'm like losing it right now, 18 votes. Everybody got that?
Yes.
All right. So takes us to the next one. We're at precinct 315. Jim Stalzer received 80 votes. David Brummett received 13 votes. John Small received 20 votes. Precinct 316. David Amdahl received 46 votes. Stephen Foss received 108 votes. Matthew Paulson received 77 votes. Precinct 319. David Bachman received 66 votes. Dale Fogelsby received 26 votes. James Hysick received 37 votes. Precinct 320. Daniel Foster received 22 votes, and Jason Kuiken received 19 votes. Precinct 407. Chad Viss received 25 votes. Brian Teal received 22 votes. Precinct 409. Thomas Sutton received 24 votes. Aaron Levasseur received 18 votes. Precinct 415, on page 13. Aaron Heidelberger received 95 votes. David Mentally received 65 votes. Precinct 417. Adam Long received 202 votes. John Bruning received 43 votes. Darren Schlechter received 14 votes. Precinct 419. Michael Stengland received 58 votes. Tarek Malouf received 5 votes. Takes us to precinct 501, which is on page 14. Carrie Bauer received 6 votes. Gary Dykstra received 44 votes. Thomas Werner received 7 votes. Precinct 504, Wade Talkington received 20 votes. Alex Hallbeck received 39 votes. Precinct 508, Corey Pedersen received 26 votes. Paul Cheddar received 41 votes. Precinct 518, Troy Small received 22 votes. Mike Ziderek received 29 votes. Precinct VP 05, just on page 20. Maybe not. Oh, here it is, VP 05, sorry, page 20. Lisa Carson received 63 votes. Jessica Lind received 57 votes. Everybody found that one?
Yep.
Okay, VP 06, which I have is on page 21.
I think you might have missed precinct 518 for committee man.
It matched.
Oh, I thought I
518
did
was
that
Tony
one.
Small, we did that one.
Yeah, we did that one. Okay. So VP 06 is where I have us.
Yep.
And that is on page 21. Robin Jaspers received 27 votes. Judy Swearingen received 31 votes. VP 10, Melinda Roth received 66 votes. Tamara Panning received 61 votes. Precinct VP 11, Kim Buchholz received 55 votes. Linda Dugard received 59 votes. VP 13, Liza Hennings received 22 votes. Kathleen Putman received 59 votes. And Lily Fodds received 64 votes. Takes us to VP 15, which is on page 22. Rachel Kaiser received 97 votes, and Mary Polinek received 60 votes. VP 16, okay. No, that's
On
okay.
page 17 of the results. And page 22 of the abstract.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I have us on VP 16. Lori Clausen received 46 votes. Cindy Meyer received 65 votes. Londa Grotting received 26 votes. VP 17. Rhonda Milstead received 136 votes. Cynthia Steinhauer received 61 votes. VP 21, I believe. Yep, VP 21. So we're on page 18 of the summary, page 22 of the abstract. Marcia Simons received 158 votes. Judy Jorgensen received 140 votes. That takes us to precinct committee woman for 201. We go back to page 17 of the abstract. A little hopping around here. All right, on page 17 of the abstract, and on page 18, we're in VP 21. Up here we are. 201, VP 2, or on 201, we're on page 17. Beth Hughes received 101 votes, and Martha Nelson received 96 votes. 202, Leah Anderson received 95 votes. Valerie Mickelson received 134 votes. 203, Taylor Rayfeld received 102 votes. Leslie Unruh received 80 votes. 311, Grace Hochstatter received 69 votes. Nancy Kuntz received 56 votes. 315 is on page 18 of the abstract. Carol Stalzer received 66 votes. Heidi Lee Small received 31 votes. Tana Brummett received 10 votes. That takes us to 316, which is also on page 18 of the abstract. Bonnie Amdahl received 74 votes. Jennifer Foss received 136 votes. Precinct 319, Christine Vinatieri Erickson received 88 votes. Amber Rickenstrud received 39 votes. Vicki Fogelsby received 24 votes. Takes us to precinct 320, which is on page 19 of the abstract. Grace Anderson received 8 votes. Cheryl Murfield received 14 votes, and Alexis Kuiken received 20 votes. That takes us to precinct 407. Jamie Kubik received 22 votes. Susan Viss received 26 votes. Precinct 409. Margaret Sutton received 25 votes. Shannon Stubbe received 15 votes. 417. Nancy Bruning received 68 votes. Stacy Long received 192 votes. Takes us to 501, which is on page 20 of the abstract. Brenda Lawrence received 33 votes. Valerie Wilson received 21 votes. 512, Allie Brandner received 67 votes. Penny Baybridge received 61 votes. Precinct 515, Bridget Napper received 8 votes. Kelly Miller received 11 votes. VP 05, or maybe we're done.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
the only one that we haven't done, and it's on the first page of the abstract, and the last page on 23 of the election summary would be the Democrat presidential.
You are correct. Thank you. All right. So to everybody, we're on the very last page of the summary and the second page of the abstract. Mary Ann Williamson received 269 votes. Joseph R. Biden Jr. received 2,275 votes. And then if you go to the provisional, there's 1 vote for him. So that ties those out at 2,276 votes. Dean Phillips received 214 votes, and Armando Perez Cerrato received 108 votes. All right. Do any members of the Board of Canvassing having any questions, any further questions? Commissioner Barth.
Auditor Anderson, I should know this, but what's the difference between undervote and a no vote, or just a overvote? How do you get an overvote?
So there's 3 things that can occur, actually. A blank ballot, which happens sometimes, where a person might get their ballot and then they choose not to vote. An undervote would mean that they did not select the number of candidates that they could have selected. So for instance, in the commission race, they could have selected just 1 candidate instead of 2. And then the overvotes would be if they chose too many candidates for a race. And all of that could occur, I mean, those unders and overs could occur on the same ballot, and we count those independently.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, well, before I turn this over to the board for a motion, I'm going to ask if there's any public comment on this item. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. So.
Jennifer Foss, Minnehaha County, Precinct 316. I just want to make a couple quick comments. On 5-2, I was a superintendent, and I witnessed a few things. I thought the training was excellent. We had a very well-run election. The process was smooth. I just wanted to bring up a comment, Jeff, that you made about the Democrats being disenfranchised because of the possibility of those votes being thrown out. Can I just make a quick comment? I did receive a copy of the ballot. Every single person that was a Democrat that voted only had the presidential candidate race. And I had a Democrat that was one of my deputies, and she let me know that Joseph Biden is the only one left in the race. So it's kind of a moot point. I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment on this item? All right, I don't see anybody moving. So at this time, I would turn it over to the Board of Canvassing for a motion to certify the results of the June 4th, 2024 primary election.
I'll make a motion to certify the election results.
I'll second it.
So we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Bleinberg.
Aye.
Barth.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
Heiberger.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right, as Commissioner Auditor had alluded to, the next item on the agenda is selection of precincts and contests for the post-election audit pursuant to South Dakota Law 12-17B-20. Auditor.
Yes. Good morning. On that item, yes. So this is the first year that we are doing a post-election audit. The audit is to be conducted within 15 days following the completion of the canvass, and that's completion of the state canvass, not our canvass. So 15 days from tomorrow. The audit is supposed to be conducted in 5% of the precincts and must contain 100 ballots per precinct. We actually run into a little problem with that. A lot of our precincts had less than 100 ballots. So, and then we are to select one statewide race, which the only statewide race is the presidential Democratic race, and then one additional race. The audit must be open to the public. The results of the audit must be sent to the Secretary of State and presented to the County Commission at the next meeting after the audit. The results of the audit must be included in the meeting minutes. If the results of the audit show a discrepancy, the impacted candidates would be notified and have 7 days to file a verified petition requesting a recount. I did a little studying of the recount manual because we have a lot of people or several candidates that have already reached out to me about recounts. So I've been studying this manual. They have an option to do recounts depending on what the race was after our canvass and after the state canvass. That's when that notification period would begin. But they also would have another opportunity after the post-election audit if there is a discrepancy. Initially, since this is our first post-election audit, initially I had talked about wanting to do a more broad audit and wanted to do the 25%. Again, this doesn't, my understanding and with visiting with the state's attorney's office, I don't have to seek approval for doing more on the audit. That would be an option that I can choose as long as I'm within my budgetary boundaries. That would be my restriction. One thing in our favor for this audit is that ES&S backed out of showing up to be our support on election day. So I already have a $5,000 savings right there. So, and I also have a lot of volunteers that would like to help with this post-election audit, and they don't want to be paid. So I think budgetary wise we'll be fine. When I wrote my briefing memo, I suggested a 25% selection of precincts. But as I was going through those recap sheets and I noticed how low the turnout was, and I know how quickly we can count the ballots through some other examples that I've been part of in training, I would like to just do a 100% audit of this election. And so I think that would reassure our public and have some trust in that. And I also think that that would help some of the candidates that had very close races. Any questions?
So you believe you have budgetary authority to do that as well as enough time to have that accomplished?
Yes. The post-election audit is actually reimbursed by the state, and I'm sure that they would only want to do the reimbursement based on that 5% or what was required. So we will get reimbursement from the state for part of that. And then the remaining expense of that post-election audit, definitely there's room in our budget for that.
So you changed your mind since Friday when you posted your memo publicly?
I actually did my memo on Thursday. I had to have that done on Thursday. And yes, over the weekend, as I was going through the recap sheets and going through looking at how many ballots were cast per precinct, knowing that we would have to select additional precincts anyway to meet those 100 ballot boundaries that we have to have for that 5%, I think it would just be wise to go ahead and do a 100% audit. And yes, I think we have time to do that.
And how would that affect the recount process if somebody asked for a recount on their race?
The post-election audit would not affect the recount. The recount in the rules, if you have recounts, but keep in mind recounts are done by the tabulators. If you have a recount, you do have the option to not do the post-election audit, but it doesn't say that you can't do the post-election audit. And the post-election audit, my tentative date for that would be June 25th. That's what I have on the calendar for the post-election audit. The recounts would happen prior.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Auditor Anderson, to do the full recount, 100%, or not recount, but the full audit of 100% of the votes, how much time do you think that's going to take? And then of your budget authority, and that's more of a commission issue, but I'm on this board and I have to approve this potential. How much money will that cost? Time and money, and not taking a peek at your whole budget. How can you assure me that if I vote for this, that is okay?
Well, first to clarify, and the state's attorney's office may want to help me with this, there isn't a vote that has to be taken for the post-election audit. as long as I'm within my authority. What's supposed to happen at this meeting for the post-election audit is we would normally do the drawing, and I have those supplies available to do that. We would draw the 5% of the precincts and then the races that we would be auditing. That would be the item that occurs with this agenda item. There isn't a approval process for the percentage of the audit. That is one set in administrative rule that has to be at least 5%. But to do something beyond that, as long as I'm within my budget constraints, which I am, there isn't an approval that has to happen for that. It would take less than a day. In my experimenting with hand counting, we were able to count one race, 636 ballots in 35 minutes. That was with 2 interruptions. So I believe with additional teams of people, plus having volunteers that do not want to be paid, that we would easily be within our constraints. Also because the state will be reimbursing part of that process.
Commissioner Cindy Heiberger.
Thank you, Auditor. I'm just wondering, so if you come up in your recount with an issue, like it didn't match, what happens then? Do you just keep recounting until they match up, or do you run them through the tabulator? So what happens if you actually find significant errors?
Are you talking about the recount or the audit?
The audit part of it, sorry.
So for the post-election audit, it states an administrative rule that if there is an error, we would expand the audit anyway. So if there's an error in the count and we know that the hand count, the manual count is good and the machine tabulation is different, then you expand the audit to include more. That's one of the rules or one of the administrative rules. The other is if you do end up with a discrepancy, you notify the candidates that are involved in that race. And then they have the option to request another official recount.
Yes.
What if your hand count is the one that's wrong? I mean, how can you assure that the hand count is right and the machine is wrong? I mean, how do you just doing it over and over and over to make sure it always comes up the same?
No, you would have in your hand count process, the way that I'm going to be doing the hand count, the manual count for the post-election audit, we would have teams of 5 people. So 1 would be a supervisor, 2 would be readers. So you would have 2 of different parties reading the ballot out loud to the other 2 across the table that would be marking the tally sheet. In my experimenting with hand count process, we have always been able to reconcile those differences. So if you have 2 people tallying and they have different numbers, you would go back and find out where that error occurred. If their numbers agree and then the tabulation numbers are different, we would look further into that and see, is there a reason? Is there a ballot that maybe was lightly marked and the people auditing caught that, but the tabulator didn't? So we would work out those discrepancies at that time.
So, I mean, you have a lot of staff doing it and volunteers. I'm sorry.
It's not staff. So staff doesn't do the post-election audit.
That's my
We
question.
create an audit board just like we would for an absentee board or a resolution board. So that board is going to consist of teams of 5 people that we select of different party representations. And you'd have 4 people sitting at a table, 2 across from each other, 1 supervisor observing the process to make sure everything is done properly. So as far as staff goes, the only staff person that would be involved in the post-election audit would probably be me. And then otherwise it would be people from the public. They have to be registered voters of Minnehaha County.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Other questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Will they get lunch?
Yes, they will.
I mean, you might have a volunteer now.
And if I have to pay for that, I'll do it myself.
Just a second. I'll ask for public comment in just a second. Thank you. Any other questions from the Board of Canvassing? Yes,
Thank you.
Commissioner Bleinberg.
How do citizens volunteer for that board, or how are they selected? How do we start with a pool?
So we started the process quite some time ago with just having people let us know if they wanted to help with that. We would love to have, people from the public let us know. Of course, like even with our precinct election boards, we always have a lot of Republicans that want to volunteer for things or serve in some way. Sometimes it's hard to get other parties involved, the Democrats, Independents, NPAs. So our goal is to have equal representation for this, and we certainly would welcome if somebody wants to reach out to our office and let us know they want to help. I've had a lot of our precinct board members that want to participate. We've had a great response from the public that want to help.
A follow-up question on that. Have you checked to see if we have the opportunity to accept volunteers for this? I know we passed a resolution where we pay people to help with the elections, and I'm just curious whether we have the opportunity to not pay them.
Well, we do, just like our election workers can choose to not receive their pay. We did pass a resolution, correct, to set rates of pay. But if a person, even a polling location, they could choose to not receive money for being a polling place. Our workers can also choose to not get paid if they don't want to be paid. Some people think of it as their civic duty, so they have that option.
Okay. We might want to just double check on that before, but that was something that came to my mind. Anyone else?
Are you talking to the board or the audience?
I'm talking to the board. Anybody else on the board have any other questions? Okay. Now I'm going to ask the auditor. If she has anything else she'd like to say, then I'll open it up for public comment. Okay.
No, that's all I have.
Okay. So is there any public comment on this item? Everyone, you have an opportunity to come forward to the mic. 3 minutes per person. Oh, and make sure you've signed in over in the corner. You don't have to, you can sign in after you speak if you want to, but we just need your name and address. Yes, thank you.
My name is Jean Childs, and my address?
No, you don't need to say it out loud. You just need to sign in and
Oh, thank you.
put that down. Yeah.
Oh, this quick. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Do I have to live in Minnehaha County to be a part of this auditing?
You-
Okay, thank you.
But every county is doing it, so.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just remind folks that we typically don't interact with public comment. We just listen to it. So if you have specific questions for the auditor, you can certainly reach out to her or to the canvassing board if you do. Hi.
Penny Baybridge, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I just wanted to comment on this concern that, hand counts may be wrong, and can we trust the hand count? I want to point out that for decades, and as recently as 2023, just last June, we were hand counting all of our school board elections, and nobody's ever questioned hand counting school board elections. And so it's always been trusted. So to me, hand counting is a trusted thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mike Mathis. I work with Lee as the election coordinator. I just wanted to tell you, I've talked to all of our poll workers through the process, and many of them are eager to help with this process. I can tell you that. And I did a calculation this morning. If we got 64 people with the method that she's talking about, we could do that in under 3 hours. And the cost, if we paid them $20 an hour, would be $3,840, which many of them people I know would volunteer. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good morning. My name is Rian Olam. I am from Minnehaha County, and I just want to say I had the privilege of processing absentee ballots on Election Day. Went very well. Training was wonderful. And then I decided to stay after because I never had. This was the only time I've ever participated, second time that I participated in processing. This is the first time I stayed to watch the machines. I've always had great concerns about the machines because I don't trust them. And a little bit of, a lot of my concerns were validated as I watched the machines start the counting. I would say maybe 10, 15 minutes into the process, of not the absentee when they started counting all the other precincts. They were having to spray air cans into the machines. Just seemed to be a lot of frustration. What was comforting to me is when ballots were kicked out and we watched what the resolution board, I think that's what they're called, if we had questions, they would answer. Why did you do that? And they would explain to us why they did what they did. So it was a great day. It has not made me any less concerned about machines. And I am one that fully believes in hand counts. I think it would be a great way to reconcile what's going on with the machines and would make those of us that are concerned about the machines feel a little bit better if things did match up. And if they don't, then those are the problems we need to address also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary Meyer. It's unfortunate that none of you have gone through the hand count process. I have gone through it several times. I have helped train hand counters. The team at South Dakota Canvassing has put on many demonstrations of hand counting. And we had one in Pierre, and we had a lot of people sit down and go through it. We had 6 tables of hand counters where we demoed for several hours. And the comment that kept coming back was how easy it is and how accurate it was. There are cross-checks and tabulations that go through the whole thing. And you do. The goal was to have two people from 2 different parties at each table. I was a supervisor at the precinct this year, and my intent was to hand count per the law. But when the state's attorneys started throwing out threats of felonies, I retracted from doing that. But I thought that would have been a great time to show how the process works. We had a low turnout, we could have done it, and I was willing to go ahead with that, but I was not willing to ask my 4 volunteers. I had 2 Republicans, 1 Democrat, and 1 Independent who were very enthusiastic about wanting to give this a shot. And their comment was, why do we not want to check our machines, our computers? If you go to the grocery store and you come home with your receipt and find out that it's wrong, do you not go back to the grocery store? Or if your spouse asks you later, this seems kind of high, we should check our receipt. Do you tell your spouse that, well, I already put it in safe, and why don't you just trust the computer? After all, state law says their computers have to charge you the correct price. I don't see the reluctance with hand counting. We've got the perfect opportunity, low turnout, volunteers that are not expecting to be paid, so it won't affect Leah's budget. This should be a unanimous vote to hand count. Let's check it out.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Ellen Wheat, and I'm just curious as to why ES&S didn't show up. Isn't that in their contract? Very, very sad that the professionals that we are hiring to do the, evaluate and help through the process did not show up. And I go, why? Does anybody have an answer to that?
Good morning.
Morning. My name is John Coonery, and I'm one of the candidates for State House of Representatives in District 11. And so we're still in play in this with a very tight race of 10 votes between the top 3. And I have great confidence in our auditor's office, the interactions we had with Leah and her team and so forth. And I believe from, I spent 30 years in IT as a software engineer. I also had a minor in accounting when I went to university. And I understand very clearly the things that she is talking about. And as long as there are controls in place, people are trained well, I have great confidence that her team and the volunteers will do a great job. From both development and operational support of software and so forth. We had a little demonstration, not to the person, but to a computer that went down. Just at the start of this, there are whole teams of that support nonstop, we all know, to keep everything up and running. And so software, machines can go down, and that's why we still have people to stand up and to verify things, correct things, and so forth. So I'm in favor of hand count and auditing, and we will likely ask for that also in the recount. Thank you very much. And I said I was in Minnehaha County, correct? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Kathy Sullivan, Minnehaha County. Came back a few years ago, and it wasn't until this last year I could really help out. When I volunteered last year, I got a call this year saying, would you like to? I said, I would like to. Airline pilot for 36 years, and I can't even imagine not erring on the side of safety in everything we do. I'm kind of amazed on boards for my job, the people that audited us and watched us check rides every 6 months. Multiple ways we had audits for our company. They were pilots. I'm amazed when sometimes people don't do the jobs that they come out and then they're going to oversee the auditor. Might be a federal auditor come in and audit us. That was very unpleasant. You never knew when to expect it. Could be on a check ride, could be on a line flight. And you had to perform. And I'm amazed when I see Leah and I think she's a diamond. A total diamond. She's protecting all of you. She protects the state. She protects the county. You have to admire people that will take a stand. We have in our industry what we call a potted plant. A lot of accidents happen that way because hardware breaks. Software doesn't work the way it's supposed to. I can tell you stories, but examples of where there's a reason why airplanes are certified with 2 pilots, human pilots, not somebody that's flying a drone and things like that. And when I see what goes on sometimes, I'm totally amazed. I've been called in before in front of chief pilots and said, your actions, why did you do it? I erred on the side of safety. If hand counting, it was wrong all those years, which it wasn't, but it's so easy to hand count. I was one of the people that was trained. I'll have to honestly say, I got a check. I've never cashed it. I do this because I want to do a civic duty, and I can do it now, and I can come help. It doesn't matter what side. I was in a precinct that had 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. We had a wonderful time together, got along. It's kind of a lot of fun. And a lot of people came through, and to your question earlier about the people, where do you get these people? I can't tell you. I've sent in quite a few people. They asked, how can we help? We signed them up right away, gave them Leah's number. You want to help next time around? They welcome everybody and anybody. I guess you got to be able to read and write and do a few things like that. But all in all, I just want to say that machines fail. I've seen them fail. I've seen software fail. Low to the ground, things that could have been just unbelievably terrible. But we're trained every time. Don't go along to get along. You got a problem, you call it out. And I love training like that. Nobody's gonna go after somebody if they err on the side of safety, and I think that's what she does. I got a phone call last week. Never gotten a phone call but I was a superintendent at the precinct, and the question was brought up.
You need to wrap up your time. Your time is up.
Was brought up, answered it, and I understood. We corrected. Leah caught it right away. We corrected it, and no problem. So I commend these guys. I'm really amazed. If I was in a business, I'd scalp her from you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I don't see anybody else coming forward, and there's no action that I'm sorry, were you raising your hand? I thought the auditor was, okay, sorry, I was just out of the corner of my eyes, okay. So we have no action on this item, and we don't need to draw any precincts because you're going to do them all. So that takes us to our final item today, which would be another opportunity for public comment. This would be, we always end our meetings with an opportunity for public comment on an item that's not on the agenda. So I would imagine you all are here for the items on the agenda, but if anyone has anything that they would like to say for public comment before we end the meeting, this is your opportunity.
Morning, Jessica Palma, Minnehaha County. I just wanted to address the challenge at the precincts. That was me. And the challenge was on the perjured voter registration forms. So that's what the precinct deputies were presented with, and that's how they made their decisions. So they have, I think it was 133 original voter registration forms that had no proof of residency. So they were allowed to go through being inaccurate and incomplete. So that's what the challenge is about. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah, if you talk about something that wasn't on our agenda today, may come forward. I would make an argument that what she said was on the agenda today, but if you would like to come and talk about it, I let her talk about it. So if you want to come up, you can.
Thank you. Thank you. John Coonery, District 11, Minnehaha County. And just saying, in the process of our walking, probably over 7 to 8 weeks, probably close to 100 miles, twice through our whole district, we came across some interesting things. We had lists directly from both the state and the county having to do with voters, Republican voters in our case, that have voted sometime in the last 4 years, but they are registered to vote, and their address is either hotels in one of our districts, precinct 19, I believe there's 3, and there's a total of 75 people that are registered to those addresses. We went to 2 of those hotels and found that there is not long-term stay there. Also, after the election, we came and found that a campground in our northern part of our district, right up against 12th Street and I-29, we found that there were 13 people that are registered to vote that did vote absentee. And we went on Saturday, myself and another one of our volunteers who was here, talked to the employee and asked them if there was anyone. First of all, is this a place that's for long-term stay and residency? And the answer was no. And she looked up those individuals, and only 3 of them had ever stayed at that campground in previous years, not this year. 10 of them, there's no record in their system that they've ever stayed there. And so that is a concern, and I think it needs to be addressed because, as I stated, the larger list, not just those who voted in the primary, there's many more of those types of scenarios, and they all have private mailboxes. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'm not seeing anyone else. So that takes us to the end of our agenda, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Johnson.
Second, Heiberger.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone.